Okay. So what have we learned? Don't try to push your luck in areas that you're unfamiliar with, because it's just going to stress you out if you try. Alright. I learned my lesson. Next order of business is to get the flame sword. I lost a little bit of money from the recent death, but money's not really too hard to get at this point. So, let's go do something about that. I'm only missing one stone, but I need the item that I can't find to do it. So, can't do nothing about that for the time being. It's not so bad though. Well, while I'm busy getting money, let's talk about my feelings on Fall Fantasy for a second. Because it's really hard to talk about Dragon Quest without talking about its Western rival RPG series, Fall Fantasy. I really do like the series. Dragon Quest and me have more of a history, but Fall Fantasy certainly is one of those series that I really do like a lot. It's a really fun series for me. One thing I will say, though, is that I think Fall Fantasy in general has done more things that I find questionable over time than Dragon Quest has done. I mean, to me, Dragon Quest didn't start getting insufferable until the DS remakes. Fall Fantasy, meanwhile, started getting kind of frustrating for me a long time before that. When did it really start to become bad? Well, I grew up with the first Fall Fantasy, like a lot of people did, back, during my time period. It was a pretty good game. Certainly did a lot more with the game than Dragon Warrior did, and I did remember liking it a lot. However, unlike Dragon Warrior, the Fall Fantasy games didn't really come out after the first game did, until much later. It wasn't until the Super Nintendo came out that Americans got another taste of the Fall Fantasy magic. And really, I'm surprised Fall Fantasy even was popular after that, because like the Super Nintendo Fall Fantasies were great, yes, but that's a pretty big divide between games. And after Fall Fantasy 3, or at least Fall Fantasy 6, that was called 3, here in the United States, we wouldn't get another one until the PS1. So yeah, that's pretty weird when you think about it. I mean, Dragon Quest wasn't very financial over here, but at least they released games. Like, they actually gave it a shot. Fall Fantasy, they played it a little too safe. And it's no surprise that the series didn't become popular until Fall Fantasy VII. I don't find that surprising at all. I mean, some fans liked Fall Fantasy 2 and 3 on the Super Nintendo. But it didn't become a household name until 7. And I'd say there's a good reason for that. Now, my feelings on the games in general. Well, it is getting late, so I won't be able to talk about it too much, but I can go ahead and start. Final Fantasy 1 is the first game I played that had a class system. And I do remember liking it all, liking the different ways you could customize your party a lot. It was pretty interesting. Also, Final Fantasy predated Dragon Warrior 2, so it was the first one to have a full party of people that you could play with, which helped a lot. I also remember really getting into the world a lot. Although, this game was hard. It really was. I mean, I remember, even to this day, going into places like the Marsh Cave and the Ice Cave for the first time. And if this game is good at anything, it's giving you this feeling of fear when you went into a dungeon, because you didn't know what to expect. Granted, that was the same for Dragon Warrior as well, but you figured out early on what it meant to fear going into a cave or a dungeon, or even a ruined castle, because it had those too. Ugh, yeah. Even to this day, I get kind of nervous going into these places, even though I know how to handle them now. Final Fantasy 2? I'll go ahead and end that for Final Fantasy 1, since there's not too much to talk about, really. Final Fantasy 2, like the original 2, I would play that for years. I think it was on the, and the Final Fantasy, Origins that they released for PS1, which gave us an enhanced Final Fantasy 1 game. I think it was the Wondrous One Color Edition. And then we got to play Final Fantasy 2 for the first time. And I gotta say, early on, I didn't like it. Because the game, I didn't really understand the mechanics all that much. And I kept making mistakes with it. Yeah, if you don't really know the mechanics going in, this game can get kind of rough. However, that didn't last, because as I learned more and more of the mechanics, I really started to dig the game. The much more specialized level-up system in this game really did appeal to me, because that's something I liked anyway. And we would later see this pretty much be continued in the Saga games that would later come out for the various systems. But for Final Fantasy, this was the only game to really do something like this, and that did disappoint me a lot, because I would have loved to see more Final Fantasies used a much more balanced version of this system. Since it did have some quirks, specifically in how magic was operated, since you had to level it up by using it, and it took a bit too long, honestly. But I will say this. It has one of my favorite final bosses ever in a Final Fantasy game. Because he starts out as this very girly-looking emperor of this empire who has these magical powers that lets him control tornadoes and lets him let's see, control the elements to his liking, which I admit I didn't really understand how he was able to do all this stuff, just being a normal emperor. It just seemed kind of odd. But it does make for good drama, though, that he can do all this. But you do finish him off. But the game's not over yet, because one of your former friends turns twisted, so you have to confront him about it. And then all of a sudden, you see the Emperor who is dead open a gate from hell and basically just come back from the dead just like that. And he's even stronger than he was before, and I was like, whoa, okay. This isn't quite as a big deal as the Zoma reveal from Dragon Quest III, but darn if I wasn't intimidated, though. And what makes it even better is he goes back to his home dimension, which is the Castle of Hell Pandemonium, and you literally have to chase him there, all the way to hell, and fight him on his home turf, and I'm like, well, things just escalated a bit, didn't they? And while I feel like the fight against the Undead Emperor should have been considerably more difficult than it was, I still thought that the battle itself was pretty intense. However, let's transition from that into Final Fantasy III. This game. Okay. To its credit, it had a very good start. You basically are these 4 kids who went into this cave exploring to find treasure, and instead found this giant crystal that spoke to you and told you that you were the Light Warriors, a chosen 4 that has to save the world. Yeah, it's the first game that kind of used this plot element, and it unlocks jobs for you to mess around with. Unlike the jobs from Final Fantasy I, however, you can customize these on anyone at any time, however you wish. Pretty awesome, if I do say so myself. However, there is a catch. If you ever are one job and you switch to another, you go through what's called crystal sickness. A very dumb concept to be sure, but what this essentially means is that you will experience a stat debuff for a few battles while you get accustomed to that new job. So I feel like it's less of a sickness and just more, this is the game's way of telling you that switching from one job to another isn't going to be an easy shift. Which I would have been okay with, except I feel sometimes it takes too long for you to adjust. Like, if you go from a knight to, like, a heavy magic-oriented class, you're pathetically weak for about 10 fights. Okay, a couple of fights I understand, but why up to 10? That seems kind of that seems a bit excessive, you know? But regardless, that's not the biggest problem with the job system, though. In order to be successful at a job, to the point to where it's fairly useful, you have to get what's called job levels. You get job levels by performing actions in a certain job, and it can be just about anything. Attacking, guarding, using a special ability, etc. Even stealing will give you job points. So, getting the levels isn't hard. However, in order to be really good at a job, you have to have a job level of at least 20 to be doing somewhat decent damage. You don't start becoming really great at the job till you're about job level 40. Yeah, that's a bit much. Like, seriously, people? What do you expect from me? Also, job levels do not carry over from jobs you already have. If you are at job level 40 and a knight, and you want to experiment with being a mage for a while, well, you're back at job level 0. So I hope you love grinding, because that's what you're going to be doing now. A lot of it. That is dumb. That is really dumb. And it virtually ruins the class system for me in this game, is the fact you have to rely on the job levels. If the job levels weren't a thing in this game, and you were dependent on just level up stats, I would be totally okay with the job system. The crystal sickness is stupid, but it wouldn't break the game. This does. I do not like it at all. Not only that, but this game, compared to the second game, is kind of dull. Because when you explore, not much really happens as you explore in this game. Your characters don't react to much, and the party members you interact with, not party members, but the, like, NPCs, some of them are decent, but most of them aren't. They're kind of generic. This is something they tried to fix when they remade it for the Nintendo DS, trying to give them a little more to do, but it didn't really help things, though. Like, this is one of the more boring games in the series, because it really doesn't do anything for me. At least in Final Fantasy II, you would have party members that would join up and interact with your party a little bit, and you would have a tragic death scene with a lot of them that gave added weight to the narrative. Whereas in this game, yeah, people die in this game as well, but it doesn't feel like the deaths mean all that much. Because the characters don't even try to stand out. And level up. Here's where I get returned. Yep. So I can sell that wings now. Do I have 2 of them? Yeah, I do. That's weird. But yeah, I don't know why this world has to be so darn boring. Even when you find out that the world you're in is really just a continent floating in the air, and you find out that there's this huge dark world just waiting for you to explore it, this is the kind of thing that you think would make for great emotional depth, but not really. The game doesn't do as much with that idea as you'd think. This, again, this is not Dragon Quest III. So, yeah, that's depressing. I'll say that. Now, one thing I will say about Final Fantasy III is the final dungeon sucks! Everyone complains about it, and I will too. Whoever designed this final dungeon in this game sucks. And by this game, I mean Final Fantasy III, the original. Just, wow. There's 2 dungeons that you have to go through. The Crystal Palace and the Palace of Darkness, and they're both pretty bad. They're both extremely long. Several boss fights you have to win, all of which are really hard and can kill you pretty quick. And then you have a final boss, which has a few attacks that can wreck you quick. So that's certainly something. But thankfully, after Final Fantasy III, things get a lot better, because we get to Final Fantasy IV. Actually, before I get into that, I'm going to actually start a new recording, and it'll probably be the last one for tonight. Because I feel like I've been recording this ever since the first episode that I've done on YouTube. and it's starting to get to me. But one more episode.